As I was saying, those with proximity to whiteness benefit from all the fight, sacrifice, um, advocacy, protests, relentless persistence of Black folk who have been fighting this fight for equality for over a century. Much longer than a century, but I'm just going to say a century right now because we're talking about the civil rights movement, the passing of the civil rights bill, the one that your man did an executive order to rescind. It's all smoke and mirrors, right? It's all nonsense. But I speak on this because a lot of this went into the reasons of why I left America in the first place, and why I have a hard time living in the U.S. It's very hard for me to live there because I just feel like James Baldwin put it best, to be a Black man in America is to be in a constant state of rage. And when he coined that in his book, it wasn't just men. It's men and women, right? But as women, we weren't allowed to show our rage. We had to always be the strongest, the toughest, the backbone, the provider, the survivor, the mother. And I know some of you won't like that, but the way things have been in America has not been beneficial to the Black family. And we can go into a whole litany of why that is, but all of it will stem back to institutional lies, systematic racism. In America, for those of you who don't know or don't understand or never lived outside of America, America is the only country in the world other than South Africa, because of their apartheid system, that asks you for race on everything. Application to get a job, application to get a house, application to get a mortgage, going to the doctor, everything and anything they're asking you about your race. Why is your race important? It's not. Everything that I do here in Germany, not once has anyone asked me my race. No applications, no pension forms, no health forms, no, not even immigration forms. No one cares about your race. They care about your nationality. So it takes a lot of thought along this, but it also takes you getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of your home, getting out of your city, your state, your country, and interacting with those from other countries, whether it's from the global south, which is ginormous, whether it's from Europe, Asia, whatever. And Asia's some parts of Asia are part of the global south, right? So whether it's a part of whoever you interact with, even interacting with Canadians, right? To understand about them. Canadians and Americans are extremely similar, so a lot of the culture won't be different, but a lot of it will be, because Canadians have a ton of guns, but they're not shooting everybody up the way Americans are, right? And I have a point to this. I'm going to get to my point in a minute, but I do want to talk about the fact that I find it astounding how so many other groups now are saying the N word like it's the word homie or something. And then my people are allowing them to say this, and ain't nobody getting their ass beat. Ain't nobody getting cussed out. Ain't nobody getting checked. It's like normal. And I'm just so confused. It's normal for a non-Black man to completely disrespect and denigrate a Black woman, and men will just sit there and laugh about it, talk about it, and allow themselves to be recorded so that the rest of the world can see them disrespect, denigrate a Black woman. That Black woman could be your mother, your sister, your wife, your aunt, your grandmother, but you don't see any similarity. No other group does this. And this is something I've seen with Black men more and more over the course of the last 20 years. And it's just so bizarre, because there was a point in time that this kind of behavior would never be allowed. Like our men did not allow this. Like that didn't fly. That didn't go. Right? We didn't allow people who weren't black to be using the N word, especially at us. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't even sing this in a song, but now you wanna have conversation and just let it roll off the tongue like you allowed to say it. Then you got like the Indian lady who got mad at the black lady over parking spaces somewhere in California, and she like and like it's her right, and she black, like her skin black, she darker than me. She like a dirty black, but she black, and I'm just like. But you say you're Indian, right? But your skin is darker than mine, and I'm definitely black. And it's like an ashy, dirty black. And it's just kind of like, don't you think if you're calling her that, you're calling yourself that? But there seems to be no similarity because of the adjacent nature that some groups have to whiteness. They internalize this for their self and they believe they're part of that. But right now you're starting to see that you're not. You're starting to see what's what. And America's going to show you, because this is the country is built on race. Period. There's no getting away from it. There's no changing it. The country is built on race. That's not going to change, right? How people grow and mature from that is one thing, but that's not going to change. Not in our lifetime. Not in my lifetime. It's not going to change. But I say that because this goes to why people want to leave, right? And all the crazy stuff that's happening. The one thing that's different about this time from previous times where things have been just unnecessarily difficult for us as Black people, or difficult for Americans in general. I lived through the recession. I lived through the 80s. You know what I'm saying? Like, I lived through the crack era. Come on. To me, we lived through a pandemic. Can it get any worse than that? 1 million people died, in case some of y'all forgot. And a lot of y'all elected the same guy to take office again after he told y'all to put bleach in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I'm just saying, you gotta think about these things. And so when you're abroad, you get a larger, you get a new perspective, not a larger, you just get a new perspective on how people see your country, but how people see you as an American. And then you get a perspective of, oh, I didn't know this about German people. I didn't know this about Russian people. Because mind you, I didn't know any Russians until I moved out of the US into Europe. I moved to other places and never met a Russian. I take that back. I had met a Russian in China. Forgot about that. But I didn't befriend any Russians until I was living actively in Berlin, right? And because I had these stereotypes and these thoughts, this mind process that's ingrained in us, because we get a lot of brainwashing in the U.S., a lot of it, like propaganda, like we drink that shit like Kool-Aid. And I'm a nationalist. I know it. I am an American through and through. I probably bleed red, white, and blue. I'm not even going to lie to you. Like, I am very passionate about my country. I can be a citizen of any other country, but I'm an American first, period. And some people might not like that. Other people, you feel me, you understand. My ancestors died and lived and fought and laughed and jumped the broom because they weren't even allowed to get married, in secret to be married. They survived the unthinkable so I can be here. You know what I mean? I know my bloodline is from Africa, and I know exactly where, what tribe, who my people are. But I am an American first. Everything else is secondary. So, with that said, when we're talking about America, people don't understand, who are outside of America, how big America is. I'm talking about the lower 48. I'm not talking about the territories like Guam, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. I'm not talking about the 2 states that aren't connected, like Alaska, which is technically connected to Canada, and Hawaii, which is technically closer to Japan than what it is to the U.S. No, I'm talking about the lower 48, the states that are all connected to each other. People, those of you from Africa who are watching me, if you got this far, maybe you'll get a little lesson, because if you've never been to America, you're not going to understand this. America is so big that every single climate in the world can be experienced on this particular continent of North America, but specifically within the United States of America, the 48 states that make up the United States. Each state acts as its own sovereign country. If you don't understand that, think of the European Union. The European Union was formed off of how the United States of America operates. If you don't believe me, go read a book. I read a lot of books. I've read a lot of books in my life. History was my first major before I moved into computer science. So I know history through and through, and I read and read a lot of books. So books are your friend. Much better than this TikTok thing and getting on these YouTube streets. You know what I'm saying? But when you think about it, the European Union came up with European countries coming together to form a united front, a united economy. Even though they have separate economies, they still have a united economy called the European Union, and they have a united body of governance called the European Union Parliament. That parliament has a president, although each country within the European Union also has either a president, a prime minister, or a chancellor, something like that. Okay? Follow me. The United States of America has states. Each state is like a sovereign nation. Each state has agreed to be part of the United States of America. The United States of America is overall the federal government, which is based in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., mind you, is not a state. Washington is different than Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the nation's capital. Each particular state has its own governor. That means the ruler of that particular state. It has its own Congress and Senate. It has its own Supreme Court. It has its own police. It has its own laws. It has its own ways of giving out birth certificates, IDs, death certificates, marriage certificates. Every single state was completely different in the way they did these things for, since the founding of the nation. And if you know anything about the United States, we had the first colonies, which was, I think, 11 colonies. I can't even remember the amount of colonies. I'm slipping on that one. But we had our colonies, and then from the colonies, they got the different states like Ohio and Kentucky and, Tennessee. And then they started going on the westward expansion, and a couple wars with Mexico, brought the Louisiana Purchase to France, hit all the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Now we form states. Each one of these states agreed from their governing bodies within their states to be part of the federal government of the United States to form a more perfect union, meaning that all our states are combined together. So we operate to the world as one, and we share one currency. But internally, we are sovereign. We are sovereign people. That's why when you ask an American, where are you from? An American will say, I'm from California. I'm from New York. I'm from Texas. I'm from Oregon. I'm from Georgia. They're going to represent their state or their city before they represent their country. Simply because if you are from outside of the United States, then you can see us as tribes. We are tribes within tribes. We have our native people, which are the Native Americans who were here before we ever got here, like the Navajo, the Wichita. There's a whole bunch of the Cherokee. There's a whole bunch of First Nation people. So we have them. But if you think of the rest of us, only people who were forced to come here were Africans. Africans were forced to come here, forced to give up their entire identity, language, everything, and be assimilated into this country and be labor. Everybody else came by free will, except for maybe indentured servants, but they were able to work off their servitude and get their freedom. So people came here, people brought their language, their food, their customs, and that intermingled with the Africans, because who you see now as an African American started off as a Gambian. Before Gambia had borders, before Ghana had borders, you had the Akans, you had the Mandingos, you had the Yoruba, you had the kingdoms of African, now African countries coming to America by force and having to adapt. They brought their customs, they brought their language, they brought their food, they brought their way of doing things, and we had to create a culture from that as a people who was locked into slavery, into servitude, and we created what you know today as Black American culture, which has gotten bastardized and distorted by what you see on social media, that they feed you nothing but the negative. But that comes with all the music you ever heard, from blues to jazz to hip hop to gospel. Gospel Negro spirituals, these are the foundations of who we are. The family unit, foundations, the church, because we had to have a spiritual tie because we are spiritual people. And we found that within the Black church. We have a culture no matter what you think, no matter what you say, no matter how you want to put it. So each group within the U.S. states, within regions, the Midwestern regions would be a tribe, the Southeast region would be a tribe, the Deep South would be the tribe, the Northeasterners would be a tribe, and they're crazy. California by itself is a whole tribe. You think of us, Louisiana, as a state, whole tribe by themselves. We have different customs. You guys might have heard of in Louisiana, they have carnival and they have like their Zulu parade, and you guys see them as being in blackface. And yes, I see that too. This is only the custom of those in Louisiana born and bred. Remember, they are pulling on traditions and cultures that were created out of necessity from being pulled away from who they are, who they were, and the lineage they belonged to, and had to create something new. That's what you see. Is it positive? Is it negative? That's part of the culture and the tradition of that particular area. That's something they have to deal with. That's not my culture. That's their culture. And you see, I'm saying that's not my culture. That's their culture. I'm a Midwesterner. I'm a whole different type of tribe. So if you think of us that way, we are tribal within ourselves, within our states. Each state is sovereign, just like the European Union. Each country in the European Union is sovereign with their own language. Some of you don't realize in the U.S. we have dialects. Our dialects, our accents will dictate where you come from and how you understand other people. I can't tell you how many people I've been around in the workplace, and I can switch up my dialect to conversate with people from the South, or just Black folks in general, when I need to, who are technically quote unquote uneducated, because they're not going to be able to code switch because they haven't had to do this forever. Code